going to talk a little bit about getting your spouse on board with your business idea. Okay. So we did a podcast about this in this past week, right? And so just to be clear, I'm totally unqualified to give you advice about marriage and business, other than the fact that I'm married and I have a business. So we actually got to interview Dan Dean, who is a couples therapist, right? So totally qualified to talk on that subject. And it was a really, really cool interview. So check out that podcast episode if you want totally legit advice about how to handle that professionally. Anyways, but yeah, so when it comes to having you've got these business ideas, right? And if, most entrepreneurs are like this, right? You get like new ideas all the time. And sometimes you have to like rein those in, right? You want to be able to like, kind of define your idea really, really well before you're like, hey, I have this really crazy idea that's not very well thought out, and then your spouse just abandons you, right? But a lot of it comes down to communication, right? If you listen to the podcast episode where I'm interviewing Dan, a lot of it does come down to just being very clear, open, and honest about what your ideas are, what your visions are, what your goals are, things like that, right? And finding out what your spouse's fears are, right? It's like what you don't want to be, don't be mean to the person, but do you actually like want to get past where we're at, right? Do you want to grow past where we are? Because it's I think it was Einstein that said something like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result, right? It's like, don't you want a Lambo? I got like 100 kids, so yeah, a kid, unless the Lamborghini van, is that a thing? But yeah, we don't have. I won't be driving a Lambo anytime soon, but, figure out what your spouse's dreams and aspirations are, right? Are you currently on track to hit those, right? Like what do they want, right? And letting the conversation be kind of a two-way road, figuring out what are your fears, what are your concerns, what are, but also what are your goals, what are your dreams, and do you think that we can hit those dreams and those goals by doing what we're currently doing? And why do you think your business idea is the thing that can get you to where you want to be, right? I see we got some watchers on right now. I'm not sure which platforms are, but hello there. Say hello if you have the chance. But anyways, that was kind of one of the things that happened with my wife and I like years and years ago when I wanted to start this business. And it helped, for me, because our business was very, very low investment, right? If you've listened to the podcast, then that our business was actually, we got hello from a Facebook user. Unfortunately, I can't, if you're inside of the group, which I think is what that means, then I can't see who that is, but hello there. And but yeah, if you've been listening to the podcast, then that we started off with an investment from ourselves for only $150, right? So it wasn't a big, hey, it's Dan Dean. So Dan is actually the couples therapist that I was talking about. He is the person that we interviewed on our podcast, and he had all this great information to share. So make sure you check out that episode. You can see in the description for this video, we have the links to the podcast episodes on all of the major platforms. So make sure you give that a listen. He drops lots of great information in there so that we can better speak with our spouses about starting a business, right? And doing it in a tactful way rather than the way that we might want to normally do, which is like, don't you see the genius in my idea, right? We don't want to do that. So when you're trying to bring this idea to your spouse, make sure you've got kind of all of your talking points lined up, right? Like you have all of the benefits and also the realistic numbers, right? Because this is a partnership, right? You're in this with your spouse, hopefully together. So I want to make sure that, we are, spending, an appropriate amount of time explaining the risks that happen with, when you're doing like this presentation, if you will, to your spouse, right? So make sure that you've got all of the realistic numbers lined up, what it's actually going to cost, right? Don't hide any of those numbers, right? It's usually like the numbers, I think, are really the thing that hang most people up. So when it comes to actually trying to present those numbers, don't hide anything, but going back to what we were talking about with my wife and I, when we started out, it was just a $150 investment, right? So it was very simple, right? And if you can get the beginnings of your business down to a low number like that, then I don't think a lot of people have trouble getting their spouse on board. Exactly. So Dan says, focus focus on the why, right? And let me pull that up here. Focus on the why, right? Why do you want to do this business? What value do you want to bring to the world? Why will this business idea help you reach your goals, right? Help you achieve your dreams, right? You got to do that dream building together, right? If your spouse is like, I'm totally happy with everything exactly as it is, and I'm perfectly happy with the trajectory, and I don't want any of the risk that comes with this business, then I don't know, that might be kind of a difficult situation to deal with, right? And in that case, I suggest listening to the podcast episode, because Dan provided a ton of talking points on there, on ways that you can kind of get the conversation going, right? Oh, we got Nick Fitzgerald in here. Nick says, transparency with the numbers is huge. Definitely removes any misconceptions. I would also add to that in addition to removing misconceptions, it also saves you from the feeling of deceit later on if the numbers end up being completely wrong and it's kind of obvious that you knew that you were being deceitful, right? You do not want your business or your business idea to ruin your marriage, right? The idea, hopefully, is for this business to become a vehicle to carry you to your dreams, to your goals, to all of the things that you aspire to in life, and your spouses, right? Especially if your spouse has different dreams or goals or, things like that. And I can't think of a worse way to, work with your relationship than to present a business idea in a willfully ignorant way and then end up ruining your marriage because of it, right? You kind of defeat the purpose for starting the business to begin with. So when we started out, it was very clear what we wanted to do, right? I started out with a blog. So it was very, very easy for her to understand what the business idea was. You need to meet your spouse where they're at as far as their understanding goes, right? If you are married to a non-technical spouse and you want to start a software as a service business, right? Be prepared to have more conversations about what you're trying to do, what your goals are, and how this business kind of functions, right? We got Yo Boss. What's up? Just finishing my shift. I swear I was thinking about this topic today. I'll listen on the reply. Okay, so that is my boy Adrian Diaz from Hasta La Vista Boss. Funny story. I am actually covering this topic because of I was on an interview with him, I want to say in May of this year. And that was one of the questions he asked me was, how did the business work with you and your wife? And, me and my wife, like I said, it was a very low investment. She was pretty much she wasn't on board as far as the business idea goes. It was harmless to her. She's like, okay, cool. It'll just kind of keep him occupied. Right. And so she ended up being okay with it. And then it started generating some money for us. And we were like, all right. And then she joined in and started helping out. And one thing led to another. Now we run a podcast where we're like 267 episodes deep. And I'm on Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook chatting with you all, having a great time. So, yes, it's so important, the communication. I like the mention of transparency from Nick there, just being completely transparent with the numbers. If you end up lying about those numbers, you're gonna firstly, you can't lie to yourself either, right? That's another thing I think a lot of entrepreneurs do, is we feel so confident in our idea and we look at the numbers and we look at the best case scenario, right? And entrepreneurs and regular people are like two opposite sides of the spectrum, right? So when you are an entrepreneur, you look at the best case scenario. You're like, all right, I'm going to start the software as a service, and then Amazon's going to acquire it. And then after Amazon acquires it, I'll take that money, I'll buy Google, then I'll buy Amazon, right? We get into like these other extremes. And then regular people are on the opposite side of that spectrum, right? They look at, I'm going to start the software as a service business. My first customer out of the gate is going to lose their business as a result of my software. They're going to sue me. I'm going to go out of business. And then I'm going to be destitute, living in a box, eating cans of cat food, right? And obviously, reality will fall somewhere between cat food and buying Google. But what you need to think about is just be realistic, right? Be realistic with yourself first, and then you can work on, trying to figure out how to convey those numbers to your spouse, right? Because I focus on the numbers because the numbers are the important part that most spouses are going to care about, right? So when it comes to, it really is just down to communication. and understanding what both of you want, right? Understanding what you want in your future, what you hope to gain from this business, right? If it's freedom, you need to make sure that your business isn't going to just stick you with a new job. That's what a lot of people find with their businesses, is that they spend way more time working on the business than they actually did when they just had a regular job. And that doesn't jive very well with the spouse. Actually, last night I was on the Hasta La Vista Boss YouTube live stream, and his wife was super cool. She was in there chatting with everybody. But at one point, he was like, I could stay on for 3 hours, but I think my wife wants me back. And she was like trying to tell everyone to stop asking him questions so that he could get off and be with his family. So, that's one of those things that you need to be really, really careful with. Is not saying that Adrian is, sorry, Adrian, if I just threw you under the bus there, bud. But anyways, that's what I want to talk about a little bit, is just some of the foundations to getting your spouse on board with running your business, or at least being okay with you having a business. It does come down to the communication, the understanding of what both of you want. It's a good exercise to ask your spouse, like, hey, what are your dreams and goals, right? Because it's easy to live day to day and not really think about any of that stuff. So when you are having those conversations, make sure it's not one directional, right? You're not just saying, hey, let's go ahead and talk about everything that I want, everything that I care about, all of my ideas. Make sure that you're getting that information back from your spouse. So if you want to hear that podcast episode, I've got the link in the description. Also, you can check the podcast out if you'd rather listen on the web, or if you want to see all of the subscription options like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and so forth. You can check us out at fearless.fm. As always, I hope you enjoyed this. Be fearless.